All right, it's time for Draft Class. Joining me today from No Ceilings, it's Corey Tulaba. Corey, how are you, man?
Kev, doing awesome. Excited to be here. Been a minute since we got to chop it up on camera. I know we saw each other earlier this year at a game, but I'm excited to be back on the show, man.
I appreciate you joining me today, man. Over the weekend, we had the big BYU versus Kansas game. Kansas won that one 90-82. Darryn Peterson in the game had 18 points in the first half. Played only 20 minutes. Didn't see a lot of him in the second half. AJ Dybantsa finished with, in that game, 17 points in 34 minutes on 6 of 12 from the floor. Where do you want to start, Corey? Do you want to start with Darryn Peterson, or do you want to start with
I feel
AJ
like we
Dybantsa?
got to start with Darryn, man. We got to start with Darryn. Let's start with some positives. Let's bring the positivity to the show, man.
Positive sides of Darryn Peterson. I'll tell you what, Corey. In the first half of that game, Peterson looked like the clear-cut number one pick in the first half of that game. He looked like the clear-cut number one pick. The fluidity on the floor, the ease in which he moved off ball defensively, creating havoc, translating in multiple sequences from defense to offense. He looked majestic. That's the way I felt watching the game live. He just looked majestic is the way it felt watching him move fluidly, floating around the floor. So we'll start there. We'll stop there. We'll stop there.
Sometimes it just comes down to as simple as like, this dude moves the way basketball players are born to move. Like when I saw him at the McDonald's All-American game, that was the first time I ever saw him in person. He looked like he was on skates and just gliding around the court in a way that none of the other players, all of the top players, just couldn't, kind of mimic. So it starts with just everything looks effortless for him, whether he is on the ball, whether he's off the ball. I mean, was Kevin Durant the last college scorer that made it look as effortless as he's making it? Not that there haven't been a ton of great scorers, Michael Beasley, Markelle Fultz, but he makes it look effortless out there.
I mean, just the way he shoots the ball, he just flips it up. It's Steph-esque in that sense, where it's like Steph can just throw it at the rim and it'll go in. Jokic has that type of touch as well, where it's like this dude just has that feel and that touch, that effortlessness you're talking about. And yeah, I think it is really since KD that we haven't seen somebody like that as a freshman come in right away and make it look that effortless. And so I think with Darryn Peterson, it's more of the same in that sense with what we saw in the first half of that game. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is going to be the night, Corey. This is going to be the night where it becomes, Peterson's number one. He's on a level of his own, and the bait's over, and he comes out in the second half, and he plays a few minutes, and that's it. And because he was cramping up again, and there was people on the ground at the game that said people with Kansas were talking to the coaches, and that he was removed. His agent was in the crowd as well at the game, and he didn't play. And I think this was really the game, Corey, as that lead dwindled away. BYU ends up losing still. Kansas hangs on. Where Jayhawks fans, this is putting aside the draft stuff, Jayhawks fans more than ever, I'm seeing it pop up. What the hell is going on? What is going on? It is getting so loud for Jayhawks fans, just as it is now in draft circles. What is going on? That this guy can look like a Kobe Wade hybrid type of player in the first half and then just not play.
I mean, it's got to be frustrating. Jayhawks fans have been loud about their frustration levels. And, I understand, because I think you go into this season as a fan knowing this is the only season we're going to have this kid, right? So, you want to see him play. And that's frustrating because when he's on the court, you mentioned a lot of names in which are almost sacred. You mentioned Steph, you mentioned Kobe, you mentioned Wade. I'm going to mention another one. He reminds me of in the role he's playing at Kansas, where he's kind of off ball and on ball, like Seattle Ray Allen, with that level of polish. Yeah. And when you are looking at a prospect of that caliber, you just want to watch him. So it's frustrating. As far as an evaluator, is it something that you maybe are worried about? I would say no. I mean, when it comes to what these guys are thinking, and yes, they are competing for a national championship potential. That's their goal. But at the end of the day, Darryn Peterson and his team are looking long term. I want to be an all NBA player, not just somebody who's showing out on national television in a highly anticipated game. So I understand how frustrating that could be as an evaluator. It's annoying too, because I want to watch those matchups and I want to see them play when things get tight, and like, how is he going to respond? Does it look as effortless as we've been saying when he's in these clutch moments? Like, maybe we get those in March. It's frustrating that we don't see it now, but if it's just cramping and whatever that kind of injury is, where it's not, like Jaden Quaintance with his knees right now, maybe you're more worried about something like that. If it's just cramps right now, it's frustrating, but I don't know if we should really be worrying about it from a draft perspective.
I'm worried personally. I'm
Okay.
worried.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to nitpick these guys, especially with a draft class as loaded as it is up top. The team that ends up with number 1, I'm turning over every stone possible with these guys. With AJ Dybantsa, Darryn Peterson specifically, I would not take Boozer number 1 for what it's worth.
I don't think AJ's in that conversation. I would feel pretty.
He's 6'9", bucket getter. It's just so hard to find those guys.
It absolutely is, but Boozer is just.
Boozer might be Horford, Kevin Love. He's going to have a 15-year career.
Well, let me ask you this question: Why is Boozer maybe not the Luka of this draft, and AJ is like the Ayton of this draft? Good player, long NBA career, can really impact the game when he's on and doing his thing. But we're overlooking the guy who just keeps winning, producing at every single level.
Could be
strictly because it's not as aesthetically pleasing. Because you look at AJ, if he's on a breakaway, he might do a between the legs dunk or something cool. And when he's got it going, I mean, look, I was in person to see him in that Clemson game where he was going off for 20 plus in the second half. I know you saw him in Boston, right, against UConn, where he went off in the second half. When it's on, you're like, this is the best dude in the class, but he's got a lot of weaknesses that have me kind of worried to put him in a conversation with a guy like Boozer, who at every single level, no matter what it is, just wins and is the engine that leads to winning.
I think it's totally fair. Look, I mean, I think there's certain teams where maybe you lean Boozer, but ultimately 6'9", creation, score at 3 levels. Yeah. I'd want to bet on AJ, whereas with Boozer, very good player. Very good player. I have no doubts about it. He's going to be a long-time pro and going to win a lot in the NBA. I just think at the top of the draft, I'd want to bet on that creation, the guy who's going to be a creator and engine for me, and still add other stuff. It's very possible that this could be like the Banchero, Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith year as well, where Banchero goes number 1 because you're betting on the creator. Well, you kind of wish you took Chet Holmgren now. Slightly safer, more of a high-end role player, but still a star-level talent, an all-star player. That's very possible. And so it could end up being a mistake taking Darryn Peterson or AJ Dybantsa ahead of Boozer. That's very possible. I think with Peterson, to bring it back to him specifically, there really is no concerns from a basketball standpoint with him. You can nitpick a little bit and say, well, let's see more playmaking at the college level. Well, I mean, it's part of the role on the team. As you said, he's playing more like Ray Allen. That's more the role of the team. So I'm not worried about that. The only concern is the fact that he's just not playing whole games. And it's noteworthy to me because when he was at Prolific Prep last year, this was a thing for him late in the year. He had a game against Minnesota Prep where he didn't play many minutes. And his coach was asked after the game about it. He's like, oh, it's a coach's decision. It was my choice. Well, he had his minutes limited the next handful of games as well. He had one of his worst games in their loss against Dynamic Prep Dallas as well. And so it was a thing for him in high school. It's a thing for him now. And you talk to different sources. You talk to different people around the league who are in the know about this, and you hear different things. Some people say, we'll see what happens. I'm not worried yet. We'll all get the medical pre-draft. You have other people who say things like, I've heard that he's gotten it looked at, that they've done IVs, they've done blood work, and they can't quite figure out what it is. And that's what I believe to be the case here, that this isn't some like Paolo Banchero style situation with the cramps where Banchero sweat sweated so much during games, all the water that he was losing, he was cramping up. I don't think that this is what's happening with Darryn Peterson. I think it's something else. And so until we get answers about that, I'm going to be concerned because this is weird. If there's any game, Corey, that you should play the whole game and not load manage, it's a game against AJ Dybantsa in which you are having one of your best games of the season. The dunk he had, the plays he was making on defense, the shots he was hitting offensively, you got to go out there and finish that game and bury BYU. If there's any game you do that, that was the game. And he didn't play the final 17 minutes because he was cramping again in that game of all games, and he didn't come back late in the game. That's concerning until they figure it out.
That you're right. I'm not here to argue that it isn't concerning, especially in this era of load management where you look at the next level and it's like, okay, well, this is a lot more widely accepted in the NBA. So, like, is he going to be a guy who is playing 40 to 50 games a year? Is he going to be a guy that is stuck in the 30 to 45 range? Is he going to be an Iron Man? Like, these are all absolutely concerns. Is it going to be Intel based where it's like, yeah, he probably could have played. So does that mean he lacks the competitive drive? I don't know. Like, these are things that we're going to have to find out. I will say, if this is persisting and we're not that far away in March Madness and we're starting to see this games in like winner go home kind of situations, then, this is going to be a conversation that I think gets heated up a little bit more. So I don't think it's something to not be concerned about. Also, like you said, this is an insane class. So it's not as if, this is the Richie year where it's like, all right, well, it's concerning, but we don't really have to worry because there's nobody in his league as a talent. With Boozer, with AJ, with Caleb Wilson, right? Like, these are things am I going to Kingston Flemings, Michael Brown? You do need to make sure you're doing your due diligence so you're not making the mistake of just taking the name. That I agree with 100%. But maybe I'm a glass half full guy. I'm choosing to think that this is something that they're just monitoring so they can get to March Madness and he can ball out there. And we just look in the rear view at this in the long run.
A long time ago, I did a story on Jokic and the Nuggets. And within the story, I interviewed Tim Conley, the former GM of the Denver Nuggets, who now runs the Minnesota Timberwolves. And we were talking about MPJ and their decision to draft him after he slipped because of injury concerns. And he had a quote in the story, and he said to me, well, there's no basketball risk with Porter. There's no basketball risk. Right. And so I think that this is sort of the same thing with Darryn Peterson. There's no basketball risk. It's just a matter of, is he going to be on the floor? There's an availability risk. And availability is the best ability, as the old cliche goes. And that's ultimately why it's concerning, but I'm not freaking out. I'm not freaking out. There's always some type of medical answers, but if it's, look, we went through this with Markelle Fultz with the whole shoulder thing. Guys have weird issues that impact their careers. And I hope Peterson doesn't end up a 20, 25 minute per game player where you don't know if he's going to be able to play. I hope that's not the case because the guy is, as I said, majestic. That's the way I would put it with him. AJ Dybantsa on the other side of that. Underwhelming first half. He's had a number of those kind of stinker first halves. Corey, what's your take on it seems like you're kind of on the side of your AJ skepticism. He's had some struggles against top 100 teams. Describe your kind of current sense of AJ Dybantsa.
Yeah, so I've actually moved AJ to fourth on my board, and I have decided to I've got Caleb Wilson ahead of him. I think Caleb's having a special year. I was really high on Caleb coming into the year. I don't feel great about it. I'll say it like that because AJ's talent is so dynamic, with what he could do. There's nothing he can't do on the court. For me, with the skepticism with his game is not, is he capable of doing it? It's, will he decide to do it? If you went back, you watched his senior year, you saw all of the 3-level scoring, the ability to get to the free throw line, the ability and the willingness on the defensive side of the ball to take all of the best matchups. And you even saw him line up across Darryn, at the beginning of that game, right? Like he's willing to go out and defend on the ball. Is he going to defend off the ball? Is he willing to kind of put in the film work that he's going to need to understand the nuances of help rotations and positioning, which is only going to get significantly harder at the NBA level with how quick and dynamic NBA offenses are. Is he willing to pass? He had a stretch, and because the top 100 comp thing, I don't worry about that. I really don't. We're looking at small samples here, and this kid could score on anybody. The thing with the top 100 comp is that their game plans are going to be better and their athletes are better. They're going to take things away. So like if he doesn't have it going, is he going to be able to leverage even the threat of his scoring to make his teammates better? And is he going to be able to do that willingly, consistently? Because I know he's capable of it. He had that stretch, around that Clemson game where he had 6 assists that game. He probably should have had 12. Even in the beginning of this game, his opening possession, he made a beautiful kick out and guys just missed shots. And that's going to happen. But is he going to, when he doesn't have it going and he needs to get buckets, is he just going to force it in that mid-range, inefficient area, which I know is a shot that he's capable of hitting, more capable than most players? But is he going to live there? Is he going to settle there? Is he just 6'9" DeMar DeRozan, who's just not going to shoot the level of threes that is needed because he doesn't want to? Or is he going to expand the game? Because he's capable. The percentages might not be, as high as Darryn, but it's not like he's a bad 3-point shooter, right? Like he's guarded out there. He could shoot him off the bounce. I just have more questions with him than I think a lot of the other prospects because it's a willingness thing, not necessarily an ability. And with willingness, I tend to struggle with that, especially when there's 2 other guys definitively, I think at the top, in my eyes, who have kind of separated themselves just with the consistency that they've brought. With AJ, the consistency just hasn't really been there.
I mean, I think with AJ Dybantsa, your point about the shot selection with him is real as well. I mean, this year he's shooting 47% on pull-up mid-range jumpers. He's taken only 21 pull-up threes. He's made 29% of those. So he's 6 of 21 on pull-up three-pointers. He prefers getting into the mid-range. He's also significantly better field goal percentage-wise at that shot. I mean, obviously, 3 is worth more than 2, so you'd like to see more three-pointers. But I think from AJ's side of things, that gets to your point. Is that a preference, or is that more like him just leaning into what he feels is his best skill today? And then over time that develops. It reminds me so much of the conversation around Jason Tatum when he was drafted. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Tjarks at RIP and like Danny Chow and I, we used to do these like debates together, the 3 of us. And Tjarks and Danny used to really be on the side of like, well, Tatum too mid-range heavy. And I'm like, yeah, he is very much mid-range heavy. I think I believe him in as a 3-point shooter long term. And he did become that, almost too much so. Celtics fans kind of hoped he would start taking more mid-range. It was like, hey, reel it back a little bit. This is too many threes at this point.
Yeah.
So with AJ, I think back to those conversations I used to have with Tjarks and Danny in regards to Jason Tatum. And with AJ, it's the same thing now where it's like, I think over time he'll move from mid-range. He'll migrate out to the 3-point line. But to your point, you don't know until the guy does it. You could have said the same thing about DeMar DeRozan in his career as well. And there were times he flirted with shooting more threes, but he just likes the mid-range. He goes back to the mid-range.
Jimmy Butler.
The way it is. Jimmy Butler. Great example. The guy who once used to refuse to shoot 3-pointers under Brett Brown.
Yeah. And look, if he turns into like the willing playmaker that Jimmy turned into, right? Like the 3-point shot probably doesn't matter as much. Now, obviously Jimmy on the other end of the ball, completely different, I think, mindset for level of compete through his career because, he wasn't one of these 5-star guys. But I do think AJ is competitive and I do think he takes that personal. But yeah, to me, like offensively, it's really just like, dude, you draw so much attention. Let's consistently make awesome plays for your teammates. Because
is this a processing thing, Corey? Everything you're hitting, off-ball defense, playmaking, is this an ability to read the floor?
A little bit, but like he's shown flashes of the playmaking. So I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about the playmaking coming around. And the playmaking numbers aren't like terrible. They have been in conference play because he's had more turnovers than assists. So I think he's trying to get to his spots. And when you have game plans like Kansas throwing Flory Badinga on you, and just like
it was a hell of a game plan by Kansas. It was.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable. So like, he's seeing a lot of things for the first time that he's never seen before, because you could throw the kitchen sink at him in high school and it doesn't matter. The talent disparity is just so significant. But I'm more optimistic about the playmaking. I'm less optimistic about like the off-ball defense, because somebody who is as athletic as he is should just like walk into more, like blocks, passing lane steals. On the ball, I think he's really good on the ball. I think he sits in his stance. He's tough. He's physical. But the off-ball defense, like that's a lot of times where you can get picked on at the next level, is just like putting guys in actions where it completely blows up your whole scheme. So he's got a lot of work to do on that end. And look, I think that, Boozer's got questions on the defensive end with his foot speed. Caleb Wilson, for all of the stocks that he's generating, he's got some processing issues too. Darryn just isn't on the floor. So, like when he's on the floor, I think he's ultimately pretty good, but he's got that issue. So everybody's got these problems. It's just like, which problems are fixable? And like, are you going to regret passing on these other great players? Because this is such a unique class with how talented it is at the top.
I mean, ultimately, it's going to be a beauty is in the eye of the beholder draft. I mean, I don't think we know who's going to go number 1, 2, or 3, or 4 until the draft lottery is determined in the middle of May. It's just the reality of it. I don't think there's going to be a clear-cut number 1 unless Darryn Peterson starts playing 35 minutes a night and leads Kansas to a deep run in March. Maybe he could establish himself as the clear-cut number 1, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be clear-cut until we know who actually ends up with those picks at the top. And ultimately, AJ has a lot of big tests coming up. BYU has some tough games coming up, including against Houston this week with their stout defense. What are you going to be watching for in that game?
Well, it's interesting because Houston has a player that could almost mimic what they did with Flory Badunga and JoJo Tugler, like very similar players in what they offer with their length and their mobility. So maybe they do that a little bit. And then like Houston's defense is just overwhelming with their size, their toughness, their length. They try to force you into making mistakes. They might send 2 to the ball on 1 ball screen, right? They might just play it at the line of scrimmage, but their rotations are always on point. And, they have what it takes to like play fast when they want to offensively, but they can slow you down and grind you down defensively too. And so, what does that look like for AJ? This is for as far as his playmaking, because I think they might just try to take him out as a scorer and make Richie Saunders, hey, go get 30 again. We saw you do it once. Can you do that again? Hey, Rob Wright, is it going to be your show tonight? Let's see what you can do. How impactful are you going to be when you have to be a scorer? I think Houston's really capable of doing that and game planning for AJ in a way that very few teams are capable of.
You mentioned Richie Saunders. For our weekly mover this week, Richie Saunders moving on up. I had Richie Saunders as a early second round pick in my draft guide last year. I knew he wasn't going to declare, but I wanted him in there anyway. The dude's a baller, man. The dude just plays hard. He's got the headband. He's a 3-point bucket getter. He can drive to the rim. I know he'll be 25 years old as an NBA rookie. But I think if you're talking about the discount deals late first round picks are for $2 or $3 million for a winning team drafting in the 20s, Corey, like think about some of the teams drafting in the 20s: Minnesota, New York, Boston, OKC, Denver, Cleveland, Detroit. You're telling me one of those teams wouldn't want to add Richie Saunders on 4 years, $12, $13 million? I can't
prime.
fathom. I can't. He says in his prime. Yeah, exactly. I just can't fathom a team passes on him late first round. He's too good of a shooter, too good of a decision maker off the dribble. Can do a little bit. I mean, it's just the energy's contagious. Do you see him the same way as I do?
I love Richie. I love his game. I thought he was awesome last year. And I'm with you. I probably would have had him in the second round if he decided to declare. I, I might be a little hesitant to say like he's going to be a first rounder just because the history of teams taking guys who are going to be 25, just like historically, it's a bet that you can hedge. And you look at like if he doesn't hit right away, you might be in a situation where you're like, man, like we should have took the younger guy. Like let's say like Baylor Shireman hasn't come out of the gates for Boston, like lighting the world on fire, but they've had a lot of success with these kind of more raw, prospects in Hugo, Jordan Walsh, right? Who develop maybe, in the G League or whatnot and just bring energy and play a simplified role and have as much success as somebody like that. So ultimately, I think Richie will help a team at the end of the first round, but I could see the argument against it depending on who's on the board, because at the end of the day, all of this stuff is just theory until we actually see how the draft board lands and the chaos that ultimately brings. Because, a team like Boston, Detroit, et cetera, could have Richie number 2 on their board, not thinking the number 1 guy drops. And then all of a sudden, this guy who was projected in the lottery ends up at, pick 24, 25, 26. So I think that he's going to be a guy that is going to be a priority second rounder if he doesn't get drafted in the first round, because he's just so polished. He's strong too. Like when you see him, it's hard to see definition because, he's what's the Space Jam saying? Larry's not white, he's clear. He's got a little bit of that skin tone going on, but he is just solid muscle. So he's going to be a professional. He's going to bring it every day. So I think he's a great value play for sure.
Yeah, absolutely is. I mean, I just think that's a good quote. You're right about with Boston. That's a perfect example with Baylor Shireman. Ultimately, we'll see with him. I think a couple more of those 30-point bangers would certainly help himself out for the first round conversation. And the fact is we don't know what the class is going to look like. There's probably going to be 15 to 20 guaranteed first round draft picks, and then a bunch of guys who are on the bubble who would say, I'll go back for another year and come back next year as a sophomore. And this class could feel a little bit shallow for freshmen or sophomores in that 20 to 50 range, which could help the chances of a senior or a junior getting drafted late first round or early second round.